the President just said, I'm not from these parts originally. I was born in Epsom in Surrey. And we were a fair way away from the sea there. How do we move the slides on?
I'll do it for you.
Oh, okay, yeah, please. We've got the first one, if you like. We've got the first one. There we are. All right, so my main interest, my main job, I've always been on the railways, and I'm still a driver on the freight trains in Scotland. But my main work has been the railways, and maybe my main interest. But ships have always been an escape, I suppose, and a safety valve, if you want to use a railway term. This was at Colwyn Bay Miniature Railway, one of our early holidays. The miniature railway ran along the seafront. Upstairs there was the main line. There was still steam on the main line in those days. All black and dirty, and except for one evening when we were told Flying Scotsman was coming through, which was all shiny and green. So that was the 10.25-inch line. Sadly now they've widened the road, and that railway is no longer there. Okay, the next one then, please. We'll go to sea. So my first trips to the sea were to the Isle of Wight. My father was in the Royal Navy when I was really young. He was an able-bodied seaman. HMS Plover was his last ship, which was as a mine layer, famous perhaps as the last Royal Navy ship to have reciprocating engines, up and downer engines, rather than turbines. We used to go down to meet him when he came ashore, and we had an annual holiday on the Isle of Wight. So the mainstay was these lovely Denny-built ships, the Brading, the Southsea and the Shanklin. We all know what happened to the Shanklin. She was Prince Ivanhoe eventually. Southsea hung on a bit, and we thought she might be saved, but sadly not. So we used to go across on them at Easter time every year and rent a chalet for a week. The paddle steamer Ride was still the relief ship. It was usually on the Coal Hulk, just off Portsmouth Harbour Station. So that was our trip. So they were the first ships I ever went on, and lovely ships. And I've always loved the Isle of Wight. I'll show you later. I had a wee boat, and I named it the Brading 2. So there we are. Okay, next one, please. Yeah, there were still steam trains on the Isle of Wight when we used to go across here. That's Brading Station with me and my school raincoat and shiny ears, and a steam train leaving for Sandown, Shanklin and Ventnor. It's still double track then. Okay, that's that one. And our garden in Surrey was at Effingham Junction, and it backed onto the railway. So you can see my mum there holding my wee brother. Distance signals off that my granddad made for us. And one of Bulliard's austerity engines coming past there. They were Marmite engines. You either love or hate them, because they're stripped down to the bare essentials they are. That's a breakdown train because there are electric train sidings there, and they were always off the road. So there we are. Okay, next please. Right, my first trip abroad was the people that my granddad lodged with in the war, the French family. He was in the Royal Signals attached to the French railways. And eventually the daughter grew up and got married, and we went across to a wedding in near Rouen. And we travelled across from Newhaven to Dieppe. There were two of those French motor ships, the Valençay and the Valandre, that went across the channel. And on the end of the pier was a dirty old steam engine, and apparently it was used to heat the oil for the heavy oil that the ships burned. And it turned out it was preserved, and it's now the pride of the French, preserve locomotives, a big compound Pacific, if you know what that is. And it was just at the end of the line there, right at the end, and they used it to heat the ships. Dieppe's a nice place. Dieppe's a nice town. The maritime station sadly is gone now. You have to walk into town. Okay, next one, please. Now then, this is in 1969. We had a holiday on the Isle of Arran, and that changed my life really, because after that, for a young southern lad to come to Isle of Arran, as it was in the late 60s, was quite an experience, quite different to the lifestyle I was used to. And I thought ever since, I always wanted to live in Scotland, and maybe one day live on Arran, But we went across on the Glen Sannox. We went on the sleepers to Glasgow, diesel train down to Ardrossan, and the main ship. These slides were taken by my father, and what a nice ship that was, the Glen Sannox, with Goat Fell, all in the sunshine. Okay, next one, please. While we were there, we took a sail down to Pladda on the PS Caledonia, and again, that was a lovely trip. The highlight for me on that was that we saw a whale. So when I went back to school and I said, yeah, we went to Scotland and I've seen a whale, you know, and I don't know what type it was, but it had the spout and the flukes when it dived and all that. And one of the sailors said, you know, they can hear the paddle beats for miles and they just come up for a look, you know. So there we are, that was the Caledonia. And the last one for Aaron was the good old Duchess of Hamilton. And we took a sail from Lochranza to Campbellton on the Lochranza. It turned out, we didn't know this, but it was a bit of a special day. The farmers were all turning up and everyone went across on the ship. And when we got to Campbelltown, it turned out there was the Highland Games. So we had a pipe band to meet us. Thought it was just for us, but no. Anyway, they piped us up what I know now is the old railway line, you know, to the playing fields at the back of Campbellton. And the Highland Show was on. So it was quite a day on board, and what a lovely ship that was, eh? So yeah, my dad took that one, you know, she came round the headland there, you know, you didn't see her in the distance, she just appeared with smoke and that, and a lovely ship, yeah. Okay, right, that's that. Anyway, in 1971, things took a change because we moved down to Dover. My father had come out of the Royal Navy and joined the railway police. He was in the railway police. So that's how we got the free passes to travel on the trains. And of course, Dover was all about ships, wasn't it? This is the eastern docks. The railway ships tended to go more from the western docks, the marine station, but this is the three ships at the eastern docks. Quite unusual, maybe, that perhaps that there are three railway ships there. On the right is the Lord Warden, one of the earlier car ferries. The French ship in the middle is the Compiègne, and the last one is the Maid of Kent. And the the two British ships were both Denny built. All the best ships down at Dover were Denny built. And I've soon found out in Dover, one, that the captains were everybody knew the captains. If you were in a shop, in a queue at a shop, and one of the captains came in, it was always straight away, "Oh, morning, Captain Sutcliffe, what can I do for you?" You know, they were well-kent people in Dover. And it was a bit of a Rangers Celtic arrangement in Dover. You were either connected with the Sea Link or you were connected with the Townsends. You know, there was no half measures. And this is the house flag of the railway ships before they went just for the double arrow. Isn't that nice? We'd love to see that flying on the Waverley one day. It'd make a change, wouldn't it? Just put that on. So that's the house flag of the Waverley, of the British Railways. Sadly, the man who gave me that was lost on the Herald of Free Enterprise. So it's a happy thing, but a sad thing as well. Okay, the next one then, please. So we all had our favourite ships. The Invicta was the flagship, built in 1940. Like the Queen Elizabeth, a warship first and then demobbed. You went straight into war service. She was at Dieppe, she was at Normandy landings, all that. But my favourite was the Normannia. And the Normannia was built for the Southern Railway Southampton St Malo service, which was overnight. So the public rooms were of a higher standard because people were on board for longer than just across the channel. See? But she'd been converted to a car ferry, stern loading only, not right through. And she did the Dover Boulogne service, which only ran in the summer. And that was 2.25 hours rather than an hour and a half to Calais. And Boulogne was a much nicer place to visit, to be honest. You know, it was, so than Calais, you know, which was really just a working port. So we used to go across on the Normannia, and that was a lovely ship. The Denny built again, of course, with those classic lines. That's it, Boulogne. That picture's taken at Boulogne. Okay, next one, please. Oh yeah, another little holiday we had was in 1973. We went to the Isle of Man, which was a lovely place if you're interested in trains and ships and all that sort of stuff. Horse trams, steam trains, electric trams, all sorts. But we went from Liverpool to Douglas on the King Orry. Obviously there was a fleet of these, weren't there? And they were all quite similar. Little Cunardas, they called them. You can see there's 3 chime whistles on the front of the funnel there, and it's a very distinctive sound, the Isle of Man steam packet whistles. So, you know, And the sad thing about the King Orry is that later on, when I was driving electric trains from Dover to London, she was broken at Strood. And every time I was going up on a train, Strood, you'd see poor old King Orry, just a little bit less every day until you got right down to the keel. And that's the first time I'd seen a ship die, if you see what I mean. But that's what has to happen, isn't it, really? Has to be very lucky and they get preserved. Okay, next one, please. Right, and then in 1977, I was at the grammar school in Dover and I worked on the farm in the hot summer of 76 to raise the money to go on the Kent Educational Cruise. And I've just wondered if anybody else has went on these educational cruises in Scotland, because most of the counties, that's probably why some of us say, look at that. See, that's probably why some of us are here, isn't it? Because it was a wonderful experience, and you could have a bridge visit, you could go in the engine rooms. If you took an interest in the ship, they were glad about that. I did a project. We all had to do a project, and mine was sketches of various parts of the ship. It was interesting because us Herberts were all down in the hull, and only the teachers and the paying customers were allowed up in the superstructure. But because I was doing these sketches, it was a bit like the press. I could do what I like, So I got in some of the nice public rooms. There was not very politically correct now, but there was a lovely pair of elephants' tusks in the sort of veranda at the rear. And of course, we went all around the Mediterranean, started at Venice, finished at Naples. It was a wonderful experience. I won a prize, a pen from the captain, a Parker pen from the captain for this project. So I was pleased with that, And of course, she did great work later on in the Falklands, didn't she? Where the sports deck aft there was a helicopter pad, and the students' common room, one deck down, was the operating theatre. So the poor lads that were injured could just go straight down one deck and be seen to, So, but she never really got over the Falklands, did she? She came back a little while, but sadly got broken. Okay, next, please. There's another ship we might recognise. My earliest trips on Waverley were down south. The first one was from Deal, round the Goodwin Sands, which I think was a little bit risky when we did that, because the sands move a lot and a lot of the wreckage moves about. We went in quite close. So anyway, we went round there. But the other ship behind is the SS Baltica, which was a Russian ship. And when my brother was in his last year at school, their trip was to Russia. And I managed to tag along as an extra adult helper. I don't think you can do that now. So I went across with them, and we went all the way by train to Russia from Ostend, Berlin, Poland, all that. And then we had time in Moscow, we had time in Leningrad, and we caught the ship back. It was a weekly service, several ships. That was the oldest, the Baltica. She was built in 1940. The nicest, but the oldest. Ivan, in charge of deck games, would find you a ruble if one of the quoits went over the side, But it was a nice ship. It was built in 1940, and the ship called at Rotterdam and Copenhagen on the way out, Helsinki and Stockholm on the way back. And it was about 4-day voyage or something from Leningrad back to Tilbury. And I did trips on Balmoral and Waverley from Tilbury. I'd come up by train to Gravesend, get the ferry across the Thames, and we would go sailing on the Thames and Essex coast, Kent coast, all that. Okay, next please. Now this is a picture of me driving a shunting engine. The only reason I've included that really is the fact that we were loading the train ferry, the train ferries that went from Dover to Dunkirk, which was a bit of an art because there were two tracks on the link span that went to 4 on the boat, Shepperton Ferry, Hampton Ferry, and the Twick, which was the French one. All built by Swan Hunters, they were, twin funnels. And the art was to keep this thing, the engines running parallel onto the boat across the link span. So you didn't put a twist on the link span or tip the boat up, because there was an inclinometer on the boat, and if started going, a Frenchman start running about, blowing whistles and all sorts. So yeah, that was just loading the engine. So I was a past fireman then. I was past the drive, but I was still second man because Dover was dead man's shoes. So you had to go to London to get your job on the electric trains and come back in your turn. It was 5 years for me. Okay, next one then, please. Oh yeah. While I was down there, I built a miniature railway around my garden, as you do. And that's the wee engine, 3.5 inch gauge. Heelan Lassie is the design, if you've ever heard of it. It's the guy who designed these little engines gave them all ladies' names, and that design was a Heelan Lassie. So there we are. That was coal burner. File it with shovel like a teaspoon, and it would pull myself and a couple of other people on a good day. Yeah, there we are. Next then, please. Oh, there we are. Now, once I got driving and got a bit of money, my brother went and lived in America. He's still out in America. Utah now, but he's lived in several states. So when I went to visit him, I had to go the proper way, didn't I? Southampton to New York, and then by train. So I went on a QE2. And it was in this sort of state when I went on it. It'd been re-engined with a bit of a wider funnel, diesels rather than steam. But it's a Clyde-built ship, isn't it? So it counts. And I went in November when it was cheap. And I had a cheap cabin, low down. So although it was rough, you were all right, whereas the people in the penthouses were like that. And this is that picture is one of Andrew's pictures that's taken from Waverley, of course. So. Yeah, that was a great experience. It was 4.5 days in, and we went fast. But now it's 7 days, I believe, and they take their time, and they want you spending money in the bars and the casinos, and it's more of a cruise now than a crossing, isn't it? But when we did it, it was still 4.5 days, and to see these big waves, and hitting them at that sort of speed, it was quite exhilarating, really. Okay, next, please. Yep. And another trip I did out in America there, I went right out to Long Beach, California, and saw the ship of ships, really, and stayed on board the Queen Mary. And if you ever get the chance to do that, do it, because it might not be there forever. And she is absolutely beautiful. They called her the Ship of Woods. I think there was about 80 different types of wood and veneer on there, but it's absolutely beautiful. There's not a straight line in her. There's a sheer in all the alleyways, and there's a camber on the deck, and she's just beautiful. Clyde craftsmanship at its best, that is, and other places in Scotland, of course. A lot of the furniture was made in Kirkcaldy, apparently. Carpets were made somewhere. But yeah, if you ever get the chance to go on the Queen Mary, when the tourists go home at tea time and you're in one of the starboard cabins looking out over the sea, it could be at sea, Yep, so there's the Queen Mary. When you ever go down on the Waverley and you look at those launching waves at Clydebank and you sail down through Langbank, you think, did she really come down here? Doesn't seem possible, does it? But there we go. Yeah, lovely ship. Next one, please. Oh, there's another Queen Mary. When I was in London, I progressed to be a teacher and an inspector at Waterloo. And it fell to my duties one time to organise our Christmas dinners in the training school. So where would you go for your Christmas dinner except on that? We went on the Queen Mary in next to Waterloo Bridge, and we had our Christmas meal on there 2 years running. And then people had other ideas, and it was never as good again. Nice that she's back up here now, eh? So that's the other Queen Mary, which you've all seen better slides of, I'm sure, but that's what she looked like in London. Okay, next please. Oh yeah, one of my other little things I did while I was down in Kent, I was a driver on the Romney Island Dymchurch Railway, which is the biggest little railway in the world, if you like. It runs for 13 miles across Romney Marsh, 15-inch gauge. The engines are sort of quarter size, if you like, and it's actually one of the fastest heritage railways in Britain, even though it's only that size. But when you're going across that marsh at 25 miles an hour, you think you're doing 80 odd because you're near the ground, see? And the engines have to be driven accordingly, so it's quite a railway, Had to do that, get it out of my system, didn't I? So I did it full time for a little while. And, yeah. Okay, next please. Oh, here we go. Well, when I came back on the main line, and I was at King's Cross before I transferred to Edinburgh. Again, we sailed on the Thames on the ships. it's always a thrill. That's quite an interesting slide, and you've got Belfast there. I think that's a Seabourn liner alongside the Royal Yacht, of course, and Balmoral. And I did organise a trip for 40 of us, King's Cross drivers, guards, and all the rest of it, down on one of the PSPS evening cruises down to the Dartford Bridge and back, which was good fun. Balmoral's a lovely ship as well, of course. And for a little while I was working on the Western region, and I used to go down to Bristol for working parties on Balmoral, just helping out in the engine room, really, while she was late, in a winter refit. Got friendly with the Davis family, Ted was the captain, wasn't he? And Luke ended up as Master of Waverley, of course. And his younger brother, John, was a steward on both of them. So that's how I got to know all them. Okay, next please. All right, and another thing on the Western region, I bought my own boat on the Thames. That's a pretty grotty day by the look of it, isn't it? And what would you call it apart from braiding two, wouldn't it? It's gone now. Broke my heart when I had to sell it. I did eventually, when I moved to Peterborough, I moved it down to Wisbeach, which was a real den of thieves. You used to go on board and there were discarded needles and God knows what. You couldn't leave anything valuable on board. But the reason I did it is that I've been trying to study the actual art of seamanship and that stuff. So I did some courses with the Royal Yachting Association and got to the standard of day skipper. But I hope one day eventually to finish off as yacht master, but you need a certain amount of sea time to do that. And so moving it to a tidal port, the days I went out on it counted towards it. So that was why I moved it to Wisbeach. But yeah, one day there'll be a braiding free and it'll be a seagoing vessel. It'll be a bit more staunch than that ever was. But it's got to be something that's big enough to go to sea, but small enough that I can sail single-handed if needs be. Don't want to go out luxury super yacht. Well, I'm not going to get one of them, am I? So. Okay. So yeah, that's the theory. So really, we're back to square one, really, and how we continue. I mean, what we continue. We're so lucky that we can sail on Waverley still up here, aren't we? It's one of the main reasons I'm in Scotland, because of Waverley and the other ships we go on and all that. And as I say, I've made some good friends. The Davis family, Steve Pictor, he was motorman on Balmoral. Now he's out of Hull. He's still a motorman on deep sea work, Paul Semple and all of you, really. And like we say, shipmates are good mates, aren't they? So thank you very much.